Hi, this is Victor Morgandi from Vive. You're looking at the Boston Conceptual Modelling tool. Today we'll be talking about frequency constraints in object role modeling. Before us we have a very simple object role model where employees are allowed to drive company cars, and the relationship between employees and the company cars they can drive is a many-to-many relationship. So a single employee can drive many company cars, and a company car can be driven by many employees. But we've got a frequency constraint over the role connected to the employee entity type, and it says less than equal to 2. What that frequency constraint is saying is that instances of the employee entity type can appear up to 2 times in this relationship. So if we have a look at the sample population that we've populated for this fact type, we've set up 3 sample populations where employee 1 can drive company car 456DFG and 123 PPO. So that's the registration numbers of those cars. And employee with ID 2 is allowed to drive company car with registration number 789POI. And we can see that the frequency constraint isn't violated because employee with ID 1 only appears there twice and employee with ID 2 appears there once. But if we change this particular element of the sample population so that we're now saying that employee 1 can drive 3 company cars, we'll see that the frequency constraint has turned red, which means that it's in error. If we click on it, right click on it, I'll try that again. We can see the model error for that frequency constraint, and it's saying fact data value 1, so employee with employee ID 1 exists in 3 facts where the frequency constraint and the name of the constraint has a maximum frequency for the role of less than or equal to 2. So what that's saying is that this frequency constraint is in error, and there's 3 instances of employee with ID 1, and that's what we don't want in our population for that fact type. So let's set that back to 2, and we'll see that the error against the frequency constraint goes away. Now, in the same model, we've actually set up 3 employees, so Peter, Philip and Joanne with employee IDs 1, 3 and 2. If we go back to our frequency constraint and go to its permissions and set the minimum frequency count to equal to 1, we'll see that the frequency constraint goes into error, because what it's saying is that for every employee they drive at least 1 car, and they're allowed to drive a maximum of 2 cars. But notice there's no employee number 3 in our sample population. So if we right click on the frequency constraint and have a look at the model errors, so fact data value 3, so employee with ID 3 exists in 0 facts where the frequency constraint and the name of the frequency constraint has a minimum frequency of the role of 1. So what we've said here is that each employee must be allowed to drive at least 1 company car, and employee number with ID 3 isn't involved in that relationship at all. So once again, if we click on a frequency constraint, and we can set its maximum frequency count value and its minimum frequency count value. Let's set that back to 0. And we'll see that the frequency constraint is no longer in error. To create a frequency constraint is easy. If we remove the frequency constraint from the model and we go to the toolbox, just find frequency constraint, and drag it onto the role that you want it to apply for. And then click on the frequency constraint, go to Properties, and set the maximum and minimum values. And it's as easy as that to set up a frequency constraint. So that's frequency constraints in object role modeling. I hope that's been helpful. Please hit the likes and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.